Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the Dell Inspiron 7559, which is a mid-range gaming laptop starting with price at around already $700 but also going up to about $1,300, which is the test configuration that I got. And in this review we are also gonna see how much of value do you get from that, or if it's just a cheap gaming laptop. So let's get started. Okay, let's start off with the design and build quality, and the first thing that I want to show off is actually the weakest point here, just to get that out of the way. It is the build quality in general a little bit. Mostly here the lid, because as you can see it flexes a lot, and if you have this flex it even distorts the screen a little bit. I will show this maybe later, but I don't think it's that visible on the camera, at least not now. But this is the main point here. It does just flex a little bit, actually, as the whole device does, because the whole device does bend a bit because it's quite a soft plastic. This is not really an issue because how often will you do this? But just to get that out of the way. The device with 2.7 kilos is quite heavy, but you have to see it like on a gaming laptop, and those just are, as you can also see, thicker, a little bit bigger and heavier. That's to be expected. So what do we have in terms of ports? We have here the port for the power outlet, here two USB 3.0, the headphone jack. On the front we have the LED as a status LED for the battery. Full size SD card slot, as you can see, almost the whole SD fits in. USB 3.0 with always on. Full size HDMI and the Gigabit Ethernet cancel lock here at last. And at the back you can see a lot of room for ventilation, for the fans and all that. Nice rubber feet that protect it from sliding quite well. A little bit of a subwoofer. So the rubberized bottom here, as you can see here, works very well. It doesn't really move. That is fine. So the build melody from the outside isn't the best one. In terms of ports, you should be mostly fine. Now let's open it and talk about the keyboard now. So let's go into Windows, just so we won't have any click noises. So the keyboard itself, I did complain on my hands-on video about one thing, that it does flex, and as you can see here it does. And it seems slightly raised when you type, like if the bottom here would actually lift a little bit over the buttons. But after using it for now 10 days, I got used to it. The key travel itself is a little bit short. It's a little bit on the shallow side. But the rest is actually fine. The feedback is okay. It's a really nice and quiet keyboard. So overall, it's okay. The only thing that I have an issue with is just a little bit of shallow feel while typing. But the actual typing itself can be done very well without too much issues. We have two-step level backlight, we have the numpad key, we have the media key button with the function lock. So it works okay. I'm still not absolutely pleased with it, but in overall it does the job actually quite okay. Now let's check the trackpad here. And I don't really have many issues, but just one actually, and that is this sound. If you tap something, you have this slight little gap beneath the trackpad, and it's just the sound that annoys me a little bit, because it feels cheap, because you can not so much feel the gap but hear it. The rest though, scrolling, two finger, three finger gestures, as you can see here, works quite nice. Maybe not always, and I have a little bit of cold hands now, but the two finger gestures work very well. The precision is nice, and the actual texture and friction of this trackpad is really nice. The size is also good. The buttons here on the right and left side work very well. So if not for the slightly gap between, I would have actually been quite okay with it. Now let's take a look at the display now and see what we've got here. So we have a 4K display, IPS. It is maybe not the very brightest one, because as you can see here, we have this, but this is quite common for let's say mid-range 4K display. It's a really nice one in terms of the physics. And one thing that I wanted to show off, maybe we will see it if I do bend it. No, you don't see it, but there is a slight little color distortion usually, but it's nothing too big, because you won't do it in use, and that's the important part. The white point on its own is good, but the thing that I wanted to show off is, maybe you can see this, I have a little bit of a yellow stain on this side. So if I would buy it and I would get it with this yellow stain, I would definitely return it. And I have a little bit of a pixel issue here, like 1 or 2 dead pixels, but that can always be the case. But since it's a review unit, I'm a little bit disappointed about the quality control here. Blacks definitely could be deeper. You won't see this now because pretty much you only see me, because we have a glossy screen. But it could be deeper. It's just a little bit too much backlight. Other than that, the colors are really nice, vibrant, vivid, because we have a glossy screen. It just pops quite nice. They are still quite natural. So it's maybe just a good mid-range 4K display, but it's after all a 4K display, a glossy one, a quite bright one, because I used it at about 70% for me all the time. And it is an overall nice experience. If you get a flawless one, there's not too much complaint. The brightness, since it's made for indoor use, I would say anyways, the brightness is absolutely fine. Now let's take a look at the sound. Yes, I think you maybe could have heard it already. I am actually really pleased with the sound. Here's the speaker, and like I already showed you, on the bottom we have the subwoofer, and the sound is really nice because very, very loud. I never really had to use 100%, just here right now on this demo. Really nice and loud. We have a little bit of bass. It's not as much as I expected it to be, but after all, quite nice. Also, the mids were quite full, so a rich sound and really clear highs. So overall, I'm really, really pleased with the sound. No complaints. Really job well done. Now, let's take a look at the performance here. And this is, yeah, not bad, but it's not quite great just yet. So, the SSD can 556 read and about 200 write, which is a little bit lower, which usually, because I guess they used a little bit of a lower grade SSD, because usually we should get around 300 to 400 write, but it's okay. The HDD though is really slow. That is not adequate anymore. It gets the job done just for storage, but it's not the best one. As for the performance itself, as for gaming, I did a dedicated video for that. You can check that. Just to keep it short, in 1080p, with medium settings, you should be fine with the power supply attached to it. Once though you use it on battery, I noticed there's a big loss of power, because I just almost jumped to half of the power. So if you want to play with this on battery a lot, then you won't be happy. But if you use it with the power supply, medium settings, with pretty much even the more higher demanding games, should be no problem. The rest, of course, I don't have to show off that the scrolling works very nice in the browser and all that, because that of course works fine. We have the i7-6700HQ in here, the quad-core Skylake, that can handle everything very well. Video editing worked really, really nice, because we have the 960M here, and with the CUDA cores, rendering and all worked very fine. Using the SSD was totally fine. Using the HDD, of course, you will notice some drawbacks here, but overall the performance for a mid-range gaming PC is absolutely nice. It gets the job done for medium settings, it gets the job done for all other higher demanding tasks as well, so no real complaints here. You know what you get. It's like medium for games, and for normal tasks on a very high level, because the 600 with 16 gigabytes of RAM and is still good enough SSD does the job just fine. Now, battery life. Full charge, 2.5 hours, which is totally fine, no problems here. If we take a look at the battery life now, and I didn't really expect much more here, because it is a powerful machine. We have a 74 milliwatt hour battery. It says 73, but at least it's stated as 74. Now, my values here, they have to be seen as it is, because those 4 and 4.5, forget that, that's just a little bit of use. But in heavier use, 2.5 to maybe 2 hours, that is with rendering or playing games, but not too much actually. But in normal tasks, if you use it for browsing, watching media content, doing some office stuff and so on, expect something from starting from slightly more than 3 hours to almost 4 hours. But also keep in mind, I used 70% of brightness. If you go lower and you do more typing or so, you can definitely reach the 4 hour mark or slightly surpass it, but maybe not too much. But I would say 3.5 is something that you should expect at least. Now, heat and noise. In terms of noise, it is audible all the time. I didn't hear any call ban, which is nice, but the fans spin all the time, but very, 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 very subtle, very quiet and very even. So in normal use at home, in my living room or wherever I used it, I didn't even notice it after a while, because it is so subtle. And if I put it closer to the microphone, you can't hear really anything. It is not silent, but it's very, very quiet. Now about the use, it's okay. Of course, if you play games, it will get louder, but then I use my headphones anyways and didn't bother about it. If you use it just with the speakers, the noise of the fans will be there, it will be audible, but the good thing at least is it wasn't an annoying sound. It was just air pumping. And not like you hear the fans, it's just the air you hear moving. So the quality of the fan seems to be quite okay. Yes, the higher the temperatures get, the higher the noise gets, but I think for the power you get, I was okay. I didn't have a complaint with it, was good. What else? Throttling, I didn't notice anything of that. I did my stress tests, didn't seem to throttle, was all fine. With the GPU, the CPU clock went down from about 3.1 to 2.7, which I guess is just a combination with this. So what about the heat? It gets warm at around the keyboard here, but it didn't ever get hot enough for me to be an issue. You will notice the warmth, but it was fine. No real complaints here. As for the software, we are using Windows 10 already. You have all the gestures. You have the max audio settings to adjust the sound. You can boost it, which I definitely used because it was nice. You could boost the bass a little bit, make some adjustments here and there, which is fine. All that is good. With the NVIDIA, you have, of course, GeForce Experience and all that. All no problem. The only thing that I had an issue with in the Edge browser, I had a lot of issues with the graphics driver just force closing and then reloading. This is an issue I noticed on a few laptops now, but these were mostly Dell laptops anyways, but I have it at home even with mine. So I think it's more of a Windows 10 and maybe NVIDIA graphics card issue or actually maybe Intel. So with the Edge browser I had issues, with Firefox I didn't. So just keep that in mind, and that's it for my detailed part. Okay, give me a little bit time to refresh your memory and give you my summary, and then I will end this with the final conclusion. Design and build quality first. It was to be expected that we won't get the highest build quality from a value machine, and this is what we get here. It bends a little bit, it flexes a little bit, it's bigger and it's heavier. For a gaming laptop, it's quite okay and adequate to the price, I would say. No real issues with it, but it could have been maybe done a little bit more substantial after all. In terms of ports, you get pretty much all you would need, no problems here. The keyboard is something that needs a little bit of time to getting used to because it's a little bit more shallow, a little bit flat, but the feedback and everything else with the backlight makes it actually acceptable. Not really an issue with that, but it's definitely maybe just average at best. The trackpad itself would have been quite good because it accepts the finger and everything quite nice, but the gap beneath it makes it sound a little bit cheap, which is my only complaint about that part. The display itself is quite a good one, maybe not the brightest one. Colors are nice, bright enough, good contrast ratio. Overall pleasing, but in terms of quality control I was a little bit disappointed because mine had a yellow stain and a few pixel issues, which is odd to see, especially from a review unit. But other than that, it would have been satisfying without any issues. Not quite the level of the very best 4K displays, but absolutely satisfying, absolutely nice. The sound also very satisfying, very loud, very rich. Overall good stereo effect and immersive sound, absolutely fine. The performance for a value budget laptop, I think it's totally fine. 1080p with medium settings for games should work out for most of the people. You can always tweak the settings to get a little bit better results, and you've seen this in my gaming review. The performance though for office stuff or video editing, absolutely fine. Video rendering worked really nice with the 960M and the CUDA cores, and for everyday tasks it's almost overpowered actually. In terms of battery, I think it is to be expected to be around 3.5 to 4 hours, which is okay I think for the horsepower you get here. I think this is more to be seen as a replacement for a desktop, and personally I would use it more on the power supply anyway, so the battery is absolutely adequate for the power and for the size and pretty much for all the rest. Now, heat and noise. Heat was no issue for me. It didn't throttle, it didn't get too warm to have an issue with it. Didn't see anything of that. The noise, of course, it is a laptop, so the noise has to come somewhere if you have powerful hardware, and you notice this. In normal idle use, it's absolutely fine because really subtle, had no issues with that at all, was actually really satisfied with the sound. In games, It gets louder from time to time, also for video rendering, which I don't see as too much of an issue because then I use headphones most of the time anyways. But if you want to use it with the speakers, it will get loud. You can't deny that, it just has to get loud. It's not super loud, and the great thing is it's an actually quite subtle, even sound that doesn't get annoying after time. That's it. The software is good as it is overall, but I had some graphic card issues, which I still blame a little bit more towards Intel and Windows 10, not so much of this. So in the end, what do I think of this laptop? If build quality and design isn't the big factor for you and you just need the horsepower and the value is okay for you, of course it always depends on which configuration I get, because this one was already pretty much the highest one, which is a little bit more expensive, but you get for the package that you pay for quite a good bang for your buck, because 960M, Skylake 6700HQ, 16GB of RAM, SSD and HDD. So the overall package offers a lot. If the value is good for you or not has to be seen. But depending from configuration to configuration, it offers definitely a nice value. And if I would have to complain about things to improve, it would be only the build quality and the keyboard and trackpad, of course, which I see part of the design and build quality anyways. So that's it. The rest is on a high to higher medium value issue. No issues at all. And sorry if I messed that up, but the rest was fine. I think you got it. And I will end this review now. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. If you want to see more content like this, just subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or things to say, leave them in the comments below. Okay, until next time, bye.